Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's meetup. On today's agenda, Walt and Scott will be providing an overview of community or special events, maps, and apps. As a reminder, we'll be recording this meetup and posting it on meetups.com shortly after the presentation. During the meetup, if you'd like to comment or chat with other participants, then feel free to use the chat window. However, if you'd like to submit a question for the team to answer, then please submit them through the Q&A window. With that said, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Scott.
Okay, thanks, Heather. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Walt and I wanted to take a few minutes to go through the community or special events, maps, and apps that we've been developing for the ArcGIS for Local Government solution. And I just want to take a few minutes to kind of set the context before turning it over to Walt. So many of you probably are familiar with community events in your organization. Come on, slides, go ahead. Oh, there we go. But I thought I'd just start with some high-level context. So a community, what is a community or special event? So you may call them both in your organization, but ultimately what they are is a community function or gathering that is really organized around promoting an activity or a cause. And generally, they may pull together communities for a common purpose. Ultimately, what you'll see with community events is they require coordination across many different government agencies. And there are lots of different aspects of a local government jurisdiction in particular that are affected by events that are happening every day in your community. And many larger events, they also bring in resources from state agencies and even federal agencies. In many cases, they're sponsored by nonprofits or for-profit agencies that are actually organizing events, not only in your community, but in communities all across the country. And they do generate revenue from participants and visitors. So in some respects, they very much are an economic development and a kind of community gathering opportunity. And they do contribute greatly to the local economies and really influence quality of life indicators in many communities. And as you guys are well aware, right, these events could be marathons, runs or walks, parades, music festivals, art festivals, and even sporting events that are happening in your community. So there's a lot of different types of activities that are happening on public grounds and even private grounds as well. So as you look across the landscape in different communities, like I said, there are events of all sizes happening in communities every day in the U.S. Some of them are major festivals like the South by Southwest in Austin, or maybe the ball dropping in Times Square, and so they're really kind of big magnet events that attract hundreds of thousands or even millions of people to them. But there's also small events happening in communities every day, and really the idea was to how do we start to provide a solution with ArcGIS or a configuration of ArcGIS that can address the big events that are happening in these communities and also many of the smaller events that are happening every day. And as we looked at the community events, what we found more closely, what we found is that they really follow a common pattern and a common process in organizations. And this process really is very similar to a building permit or development permit in your community. What we found is that there always typically is an application that will be filed by the event organizer or the promoter, and that will go through a review process to determine whether or not the event can be conducted at that location and whether or not they have the right traffic control measures in place, the right processes in place to handle food and beverage service. And many of the public safety concerns are addressed that, when you have large gatherings of people together. And as they're doing that review process, they're also beginning to develop, the community's beginning to develop a set of plans that will help mitigate the impact of that event in the community when it does occur. We also found that when, as these events are unfolding and happening in your community, there's a great deal of information that's needed by first responders to understand what's going on in the ground. There are many times inspection activities that are occurring throughout the duration of the event to ensure that things have been installed properly and that all the proper safety measures in place, and that police and fire folks are ultimately very concerned about how crowds are flowing through these incidents, and if an incident were to occur, how they would be able to get response apparatus to that location that's happening near the event. And finally, a big aspect of the community event workflow is just providing information to the public. That could be simple maps about the event itself, and where is the parade route and where are the viewing areas along that. If you're a spectator that's participating, you're going to want to know where you can park and register for that event and maybe what the event route looks like. And ultimately, elected officials and the media are going to want to understand not only the information about that event, but ultimately the elected officials are going to be very concerned about mitigation strategies and kind of preparedness activities you're putting in place to prevent an incident from occurring during that event in your community. We also found, a set of common challenges as we talked to communities across the country, as they were dealing with these events. One, just the sheer pace and size of these events is growing each year. I think Austin said they have 400 plus events in their community. Some of those are very small block parties and some are major events that attract lots and lots of people. What we also notice is that there really isn't kind of a common system that acts as a system of record for these events. We've seen communities who are using pieces of existing technologies they have and trying to put them together into a single workflow, but there isn't a kind of a common system that's addressing that entire, from application all the way through public information. And finally, obviously, people are ultra sensitive in the current climate to the risks from either weather or man-made incidents that are happening in this community, and the potential. No one wants to be that mayor standing in front of the press or having to deal with something that may have happened, because it could have a devastating impact on the community. So finally, let me just talk a little bit about, oops, sorry, went one too far. We had the good fortune about 16 months or so ago, maybe 18 months or so ago, to connect up with the city of Austin and begin to work with them deeply to define a new set of offerings for community events. Many of you may remember one of the first solutions we developed was a special event planning map, and it was an ArcGIS desktop configuration that helped communities produce map-based representations of these event plans. But we knew that wasn't enough. We knew we had to go deeper and begin to address kind of the larger workflow in a community around special events or community events. And like I said, we had the good fortune of connecting up with Austin, and we spent a great deal of time with them and many other communities to really understand, how do these events, how do events unfold in a community, and ultimately how can maps really begin to optimize those workflows. So the result is a new set of solutions we're going to share with you today that were actually shipped in our June or user conference release earlier this year. And what you'll see is those solutions cover many aspects of that workflow that I described earlier. They start with the actual permit application. There's a set of ArcGIS configurations that help with review of that permit and ultimately coordinating the review across the different stakeholders in the organization. They help you create a digital representation of that event map, or that many times they call that the site map for that event. And ultimately that becomes kind of the situational awareness for the event that's occurring, or at least the foundation for situational awareness for that event. And then finally, the last area we touched on in this first release of these new community event solution offerings is that public information. So how do I kind of begin to move away from PDF maps that are on my website for these events to interactive maps that provide the latest information about those activities that are happening in my community, and then begin to organize that data into a calendar. So if people that are coming to my community or maybe interested in going to events on this weekend can discover those events near them and get detailed information about them. So that's a high-level overview of the solutions themselves, and what I'd like to do now is turn it over to Walt and have him really take it from here and show you exactly what we've built and answer questions you may have. While I'm turning it over to him, does anyone have any questions on kind of the context?
Nope, there's no questions so far.
Okay, sounds good.
Great. Thanks a lot, Scott. Hello, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining us today. I just want to share my screen here so you can see everything I want to show you. As Scott mentioned a couple minutes ago, that this first release that was released back in June of the community events is really a collection of maps and apps that he mentioned just a minute ago to cover all the things from the initial permit application for the event up through the event review and approval process. And a little bit later on, we're going to talk about a couple more phases of the event, the planning and operations phases of the event as well. So what we're going to do then, I'm just going to go over these events at a high level here, and then I'm going to dive into them and show you what they are, and then I'll come back to this page a little bit and show you how you can get access to them. So on this page here, you notice that I'm in the Planning and Development page under ArcGIS for Local Government, and there is a list of community event applications in here. The first one you see on the list is the one that Scott mentioned a minute ago for applying for a permit application. It allows the event organizer or a sponsor to be able to go to a community's event web page and access this application, submit information about an event, and then it goes into the review process. The next application in the list here is then to create a sitemap. Allows either the event coordinator, which is internal to the organization, or the event organizer, if you deploy it that way, to be able to access a event map to be able to add information and features on that event map where things are going to be for their event. And then there's the event review application, which allows internal agencies to be able to go and contribute to that event permit and give their approval. And then the last one is the event coordination one, which allows the event coordinator, who is really the traffic cop of the whole event permit review process. And then last, we have two applications that allow the public to be able to gain access to information once that permit has been approved. And those are the event gallery, so that the participants or spectators can pull up a map of the particular event, and there's also an event calendar that we'll go over in a minute too. So that's kind of a high-level overview of what they are and what we're going to cover. Now let's dig into them a little bit. The first one on the list then is the events permit application. As I mentioned, this is usually put on the events webpage, can be set up to be installed there on their webpage, and allows the public to come in and say, hey, I have an event that I'd like to apply for, and it requires them to fill out all this information, such as their event name, the type of the event. You can see that there's quite a list you can pick from off the list here. You can get some information about the description of it. If you have a website, you want to provide all the information that's necessary to be able to get your event approved. There's some locational information that can be added to it, as well as the sponsor's name and contact information, so that the city or organization or the community can follow back to the organization and contact them if they need to get some more information. The event organizer then can communicate when they want the event to happen. And then there's a series of questions that are required from the community to know what kind of event it's going to be. And you can see the way we've got this one configured, that we've asking questions, is this going to be an annual event? Is it going to be open to the public? Or you can serve food or alcohol, fireworks, and things like that? These questions are helpful. We've learned that allows you to route the event permit request to the appropriate staff internal to the community so that they know that there's going to be an event there that's going to require their review. So we go down through the list here, and we can see that you can also submit a date when it was submitted. If you have an event hard copy map, that's also, you can attach that so that the city can then review your event site map that you proposed. And then you can either type in the address or just drop in a point where you want that particular event to take place, and then just submit that. And once you submit that event application, it will show up in an events map. And the first one we're going to cover then is the site map. And the site map is what's going to accompany that event permit. And as Scott mentioned earlier, these are really just like digital records of what goes on year after year in a community. And therefore, it's important for us to keep track of which events have been applied for and which events have been approved. And you can see the first thing you have on here is an event filter. We have a series of events that either have been approved or are under review. And in this case here, we're looking at the MS Walk, which was just submitted. So if I just pop into that particular event, you can see this is the location that came with that particular event permit request and all the information that was submitted with it. If I scroll down the list here, and if there was an event site map that was submitted with it, I can open that up so that you can see what the event organizer wanted and what they're envisioning that event to be. And this is kind of typical. What I saw when I was doing some research for this application is that there's some kind of an app or map, I should say, like this PDF. It shows you a little bit about where the route is going to be, or an extended route. It shows you kind of a zoomed-in view of where the start and the finish is going to be, where the tents, the food vendors, restrooms, registration desk, and things like that. So it kind of gives you an idea where things are going to be at, but we'd like to do it a little bit better than that. So what we can do is come back to our event sitemap, and we'll just open up the event editor. The event editor then gives us a series of feature templates that we can use to be able to create that sitemap. And as you can see, we've used the event route feature template to be able to indicate where that route is going to be. And then we also have some other information here, like if we wanted to, we could add in some parking restrictions or pedestrian routes or fire lanes and so on. And then, of course, you can configure these however you want to, but this is what gets provided to you when you get these applications out of the box. It also allows you to set these preset values, such as the event name, maybe the description. I've got it configured so the setup time and the takedown time for this particular event. And the advantage to this is that every time I grab one of these features and I put it on the map, it's going to take these preset values and apply it to each feature. So that means I only have to type in that information one time. So it makes it streamlines the process to be able to create or add to that information, in this case, the sitemap. So if I zoom in here a little bit, you can see there's more information that's already been added to this particular event map. And we can see here we have the restrooms already. We have the start and the finish and the food vendors and the registration desk and stuff that came from our sitemap that was attached to the event permit. And we have some other information in here, such as the event parking area that we've indicated, or that the event organizer, whomever is, put this sitemap together. So we have some information in here about our event. And we can add to that information if we want to. We can come up here and we can pick from a list then. If we just want to look at the assets, we can scroll down the list. There's, you can see, quite a few different assets that we can drop on the map if we needed to. We also have some things in there, the event routes you saw, and then the event areas, which include things like bus loading zones and fireworks fallout areas if it's the 4th of July or something like that. We have staging areas and so on. Again, all the attributes from the preset values then would be applied to each one of the features that are dropped onto the map. So now we have a sitemap that has been created for this particular event. Once that's been created, then it goes into the event permit review process. So we'll open up that app. You'll notice it looks pretty much the same. Again, that information is entered one time. It's in a feature service, then it's available. In this particular case here, we happen to be looking at an application that's been configured, actually the crowdsourced polling application, that allows the internal agencies to be able to review that permit. So if planning, parks, fire, police, and so on are responsible for taking a look at that application and then reviewing and approving it. So again, we can take a look at the information on this particular event, which is the MS Walk. We notice we have the same information that was entered the first time. We don't have to enter that, from paper into the digital because it was entered the first time. But we get some other information along with it besides the sitemap. We can add comments. So if I'm a reviewer, I've been assigned to be able to review this particular permit request, I can come and give in my name, select off what organization I belong to, add some comments, any instructions that are necessary, and then decide what actions should be taken based on that information and submit it. And as you can see in the list here, there are several comments that have already been submitted on this particular event. We have Police Department Lieutenant Mike Wilkerson has commented that the route crosses Jefferson at West Street and will require some traffic management, so 2 traffic safety officers are going to be needed to be added to the event cost estimate. We have Public Works. They want some trash cans and toilets to be added, so they want those added to the map. And then EMS has commented on additional EMS staff and vehicles required to cover the route. So that's a way to solicit and get information from the internal agencies that are responsible for reviewing that information and then giving that back in a digital form so that it can be added to the collection of information that's being added for each step in the process. So once all that information has been collected on a pending event, the next step is to go and them. So the coordinator role, let's go back and redo that then. The coordinator would see this, the map that looks like this. And again, it's a configuration of Web App Builder. So they can see the same things that would be in the sitemap, but they have some additional capabilities, as you probably saw but didn't hear a minute ago. Again, so they can use the event filter, select out whatever event they happen to be working on today. So they might be working on this MS Walk one, for example. And then they can go in and add whatever features are necessary. I'm just going to scroll down here and hit back so that you can see the list of them. They can go up to the top and select, what template they want to look at. They zoom in, they'll get more templates that will show up. So they have all that capability to create and edit the sitemap, add features to it, do all that stuff. But the additional functionality, again, that you saw me kind of demonstrating was they can go into the attribute and say, well, I want to get some information on this particular event. So if we click on that event, and just say, okay, I want to see all the information on that event, then I can scroll through the list and say, well, here's the information on the event itself. Here's a list of all the assets, a list of the type of asset, where it's going to be located, when it needs to be set up. So they have that control, as Scott mentioned, kind of the traffic cop, to say, all right, so this stuff has been under review, but it's not been approved yet. Then they can come in and they can take a look at the event route if they wanted to, or if there are multiple things like pedestrian routes, the community event areas, and then also the comments. And these were the comments that were submitted in the previous application and the permit review process. So if necessary, they could come into the app and say, okay, it looks like Public Works wants me to add some things, some trash cans and toilets to the route, and then we need a couple of traffic officers at that intersection. So again, they could go back up to the event event editor and add that stuff in there. I think this will be the last time I'll do a try it live, Scott. So then the next step in the process then would be the events gallery. And what the events map gallery does is it's an application that works on a group. And this is probably where you heard me come back. Yes.
I was just going to say, before you hit that, if you could just touch for a minute on how the events coordination app helps the coordinator kind of move the permits through the status, right? Maybe just touch on that a little bit so people kind of understand how the data is moving through there.
Yeah, let me do that real quick here. So let's go back into our application here and select that one.
And say hi, Google, Walt.
Yeah. That's right. Okay, so what it allows us to do is be able to go into these whichever one they're in, whichever application they're in, and then select which the permit that they're working on at the time. Again, I'm just going to go back here and apply my filter. So I can look in here, or I can go into another one. Let's just look at the Memorial Day Parade, for example, because that one has already been approved. So to get to your point, Scott. So I've got this one here selected. So let's go back into our editor. And I want to be able to see where what the status of this particular feature is. So if I select on that event permit application and I scroll down here, I can see that this one has been approved already. But the other one on the MS Walk has not been approved. So once I've supplied all the information that's necessary using the comments that would be supplied here and added it to the map, and the individual stakeholders have added their approval to it, and if they've changed this instead of under review, they've changed it to approved, then I would be able to see that and communicate that information back to the organizer, the applicant, and then mark approved for that particular permit. And once that's been approved, then it turns green as that one you saw there in the example. So if I just hit back again, you'll see that the color of that has changed. So that's one way for the event coordinator as traffic cop to be able to get the information from the individual stakeholders in the review process, and then add the information that's necessary to the sitemap, and then approve the actual permit, and then communicate that information back to the event organizer through the contact information that was supplied. So that's kind of covers that step. Scott, I don't know if there was anything else you wanted to cover.
No, that's
before
perfect.
I move on. Okay.
I just wanted people to understand how things kind of move through a state as they're going through that review process.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so now that has been done and it's been approved, and we want to communicate the event to the general public. And again, we'll go to our map and app gallery. As I mentioned, it is a configuration of the map and app gallery app which works on a group. So I have a group with a series of web maps that have been submitted to them. And so let's just go into our MS Walk map, and we can see, hi Esri, and all the other information that's been supplied with this. Also, you can do is you can click into the information if you wanted to get information about what's going on at that particular event. Click on another event and get that information as well. If you're a resident, you might want to see, well, which closed, when are these streets going to be closed and so on like that. Quite often this happens, either through community's website, or maybe there'll be a leaflet or something like that would be put in the mailbox to let you know. But this would be provided through a community events web page, could be at least. Okay, so that's a good way for you to communicate information about events that are occurring to either the spectators, the participants that are going to be watching it, or maybe the residents that are going to be impacted by the event on that particular day. And it can be done through the Maps and App Gallery. But another way that you might want to promote your event and draw people into the community to help is through the events calendar. And as it mentions here, the events calendar helps you discover festivals and concerts and other activities that are happening in another location. So for visitors that are coming into an area, they want to know what's going on at a particular location or a particular date, so they can be able to go into this map. If you have this up on your application, on your website, and be able to see all the different information, so you can see all the different events. So one way to do that is I can come in here and query it and say, all right, well, I can query it by a particular location, and this default location will just pick it off there and list them, and it's going to circle around and give us all the events that are happening in this distance, and it kind of gives us a little bit of information about each one of them. So I can just click on them and get the information on them. If I want to, I can scroll down again. This is the same information that was just provided initially through the event permit application. And so that's a quick way for users to be able to find out what's happening around them, or visitors if they're going to be visiting somebody that they know in that area. And so that's one way. Another way they can do that is they can come in here and say, well, I want to select it on a particular date, and maybe I'll just select today through the end of the month and see what might be happening in Naperville. And I can see I have a series of different events that are going to be taking place in the next few days. And then if I wanted to, then I can add that to a list of my events so that I have it on my page, so I know where that event is going to be. So especially important if if you're coming in from out of town, you need to know, I got a marathon or something like that I'm going to be running. I need to know where I'm going to be staying, where is the event going to take place, and all that other information. So this is a good way to communicate that information to people that may not be in the immediate area. So these are the series of applications then that are available now, that you can go back to the web page and use them. You can use them individually or all of them as you want to. Again, you have the Try It Live, which I was just showing, the Try It Now. You can select on Learn More to go in and get the information on what's required for this particular application. You can also get some information on, like, what do you get, how does it work, and so on. And it has very good documentation, tells you how to create your groups, how to publish the services, create the maps, how to configure the applications, and some additional help, such as this one, like real-time permit. If I want to have people notify real-time when a permit application comes in, this gives you a way that you can configure that. So we covered quite a bit of ground.
Oh, no, that was one of the questions actually that came in. Yeah. So how do you kind of handle the notification? And I'm glad you hit on that, because that is a workflow that we documented. You need GeoEvent to do that right now, but that is a way to kind of send email notifications as permits come in. And the status of those permits may change throughout the process too. You could configure it for both.
Right. Good point. So yeah, let's cover questions, I guess. How are we doing on question? Heather, can you?
Yeah, there's one question from Drew, and it's regarding the event permit application. Is it customizable?
Yes, you can configure that. Like maybe you don't want all the attributes that I have in here. You want to have different ones. This may be too long for you, or perhaps too short. If some people have very long ones, but yes, you can configure that. It's a configuration of the GeoForm application. So you have ways that you can configure it, and it explains how to do that in here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The event permit review, does a reviewer need an organization account to sign into to add comments?
Yes, so they would be part of your organization. So, somebody within the community, the city or county or whatever it is, they would have access to it. So the answer to the question is yes, they would need to have access to that application. And you want to keep this, internal.
Okay. One question from Lauren. When she visits the solutions site for the event, she doesn't see a download button. Do you want to just explain to them why there isn't a download button for some of them?
Right. Yeah. So none of these applications that we are working on, or I showed you today, are configurations of a desktop, like ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro. These are all online applications, and so the way that you can configure them, again, you can just follow the instructions here, But we also have services in the service catalog that you can use or publish your own if you wanted to. You could just take our services and add your own attributes to them, configure them however you want to, and publish them into your own organizational account. So there are no downloads because there is no desktop configurations. These are all online using online application templates.
Okay. Another question is, how does the events calendar look on a mobile device? Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Walt?
Sure. I think, this one is still the JavaScript, if I'm not mistaken, Scott, so I don't think this one...
It's a responsive app. No, it is.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
it'll reformat. Yep.
Okay. I haven't tried it on mine, so I should try that. But
Charles has a question. Do any of these apps require server?
They don't require server. You can use them with ArcGIS online, hosted online, or you can use the services can be in your portal. I guess I should say the events calendar app requires a web server because it is a JavaScript application.
Yeah.
Okay. We talked about how the different departments would get notified if a permit is approved, correct?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Do each of these apps, do you have to use each of these apps, or can you set up only some of them?
Yes, you can just set up the ones that you want.
Okay.
Right, yeah, that's a good point, Walt, right? Because we made a conscious decision. They all work together as kind of part of a larger workflow, but you can definitely just pick and choose and deploy just individual apps as you need to in your organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so each one's documented separately.
Okay. Are these apps available in Portal? If not, will they be?
You can deploy them in Portal. Yeah, the apps have to be
Right.
configured. They're all online, so you can use our feature services, the feature template. I guess you call them templates of the services that we provide in the service catalog, and then you can deploy them in Portal or host them online in your organizational account, and then configure your applications using those services, those feature services.
Yeah, the one probably caveat to that is it depends what version of Portal you're using, because we are using some more recent widgets, Walt, right, you're using the Smart Editor widget.
That's true.
And
That's
you're
true,
using,
yes.
what's the other one you're using? The filter widget, I think, or what's that one called?
The group filter widget, yeah. And let me
Group
just,
filter, yep.
I guess I can just show you those real quick here so you can know which ones they are. But if you go into the configure application for the sitemap or for the coordinator, and you can look down here, you'll see that we have documented how to create them for the group filter, and then it does apply that does apply what
Right.
version you are using. Yes.
So that's
You
the
could
only
use
caveat,
other
depending on the
widgets.
version of Portal.
That's right.
Right.
Right. So you could use the other filter. There's a simple filter, and then there's this group filter. You could use it either one.
Okay. That's all the questions for now. If you guys want to continue.
Okay. Yeah, let's see. How are we doing? We have plenty of time. So I just wanted to cover this real quick. I hadn't gotten to it earlier, but yeah, you can go into the steps, step by step for each one of these individually. It talks about how you create your groups, what do you do, how do you publish the services, and then again, you can scroll down here and it says, okay, if you want to create a new hosted feature service, you can do that, and just click on the community events, and it'll take you into the service catalog where you can get an example that we've created for events, and then you can use that as you want to. If you choose to use this particular feature service for community events, then you can grab the URL and put it into your organization, just to create a new layer in your organization using the service URL here. So that's one thing I wanted to cover. You can then, of course, once you've created it in your organization, you can manipulate that however you want to, if you want to add certain attributes or remove some of them that we've provided in there. But you get the symbology and other details that we've created, the schema and so on that we've created is included in there. So you can see if you click on the data, here's all the attributes that have been included in there. So that's how you can use it. So I also wanted to mention, let me just pop back here, that you can get to these through planning and development, which is a good one because they are very important for planning and development. You can also get to them from fire service, emergency management, or law enforcement. It's the same apps. The only difference you might see is that the example of data for here is a statewide, and these are local. So that's how you can get to them and how you can leverage them. Again, just go to the local government and then select on one of these communities. And I'm going to go back to the planning and development to show you how you can get to them. And once you get into those, you can scroll down the list and you'll see learn more. And that's where there is a list then of each one of the applications that we covered today. So that's a little bit of how you get to them, how do you use them, and so on. I'll let you guys discover that as you want to. And I just want to, let me just get back to cover a little bit about how they can help you. So as we talked about earlier, it allows you to manage the permit request sort of seamlessly, so you can get the information from the initial permit request all the way through the review and approval process. You can create a sitemap electronically and then share it. This is very helpful because a lot of these events are annual, so you can save it off, last year's event off, and then grab it for this year and then just make whatever changes to it that are necessary. You may not have to create the entire new event. The permit approval process is very good because you can get it from other stakeholders. Those could be internal or external. Let's say if you have to get some permit from the DOT, the State Department of Transportation or something like that, you could also give them access to it. You can coordinate the permit requirements and conditions. It allows you to kind of keep a running order of what has been approved, what's not been approved, and then communicate that information back to each organizer or applicant. And then you can communicate that information to the spectators, residents, and so on. Same information that can be brought forward from those feature services that I showed you a minute ago. The next thing we wanted to talk about what's coming. As we talked about earlier, Scott laid out that diagram, as you remember, that we have in the next steps are the event planning and the event operations and management. Those are two phases of the event once it's been approved and information has been given out to the public and the event is going to take place. What we are planning to do is to work on these two phases, a series of applications to support these two phases of the event process. And you can see on the screen here is a few of them that I've got listed. We have cost analysis. We anticipate that a lot of people have told me, especially law enforcement, fire, and so EMS, and so on, public works, that each one of these events costs money, and that cost goes back to the event organizer typically, and so they would like help with a way to be able to keep track of those costs on a map. So if I decided I needed two traffic control officers at that intersection, what would that be, for the duration of the event? How much would that cost? And you can add all the other information in as well, like trash receptacles or whatever. So that's one. Another one that's a big one is the integration with what's called the incident action plan. On larger events, there typically is required as an incident action plan, and that can be done weeks or months in advance, depending on the scale and size of the event and how big the impact is going to be to the community in terms of geographically. So an incident action plan needs to be created ahead of time. It goes through its own process. And again, that happens after the event has been approved, but before the event actually occurs. And that typically happens with public safety, law enforcement, emergency management, or fire departments. And so we know that there is a step process that needs to go to integrate an event sitemap and event location with that incident action plan. Another one is the resource allocation and positioning. Quite often you have to things like traffic management and things like that, so you have to move things around. So there's resources that need to be allocated. Sometimes in some events they have food, and so there are food vendors that if it's a multi-day event, maybe a food vendor or somebody like that needs to there needs to be an inspection to make sure that everything is being, all the compliance is being met. So there are several things that happen in the planning stage. Then in the event operations and management, they're typically, if it's a large event, sometimes the EOC, Emergency Operations Center, can be activated in advance of the event. Oftentimes, when that's not required, like let's say there's not going to be a major weather event coming, so we don't need to activate it, it may just be that a command center at the event location or venue may be up and running, but not necessarily the EOC that would impact the larger community, perhaps the county or the state. So you need to monitor the event status, what's going on. You may be able to anticipate when weather is going to impact the event, when maybe you need to close things down or evacuate it or whatever, what traffic is going to be impacted by the event. And sometimes you want to make sure that there aren't two events overlapping each other or could have a traffic impact on the same date. And then there are other external factors that you have to be aware of. Then the last thing on the list then is we know that there needs to be some sort of an application that allows us to do after-action reporting. So we need to be able to look backwards at an event and say, how did it go this year? What changes do we need to make next year before we approve that permit? Again, that typically happens. And this is maybe not a complete list. There may be other ones that you think that should be on this list, which brings me to my next point. We are actively looking for people that want to collaborate with us on what type of applications that would be helpful and are common across the domain of users that are responsible for doing and conducting events. And so if you are interested in participating with us and you have some ideas, please send me an email just at wpotts@esri.com with your ideas, and I'd be glad to follow up with you and have a conversation with you about what kind of ideas or participation you want to have in that. So any other questions that we didn't cover?
Yeah, there is one question from Claire. If you don't have Portal, will on-premise ArcGIS for server still work for standing up your feature services?
No, you'd need, this is using the feature services and our ArcGIS Online, so you'd need some way to communicate that information out to other people that are going to be participating with it. The applications then wouldn't work if you didn't have Portal or ArcGIS Online. You could choose one or the other.
Yeah, so you could definitely have the feature services running in ArcGIS server, but you'd have to use ArcGIS Online for the web maps and the applications.
Okay. And Kirk had a question. If you do not have Portal, can you use internal web server for your apps?
Well, if you did that, you need web maps. You need web maps, so you need a web map from online then. And if you are using ArcGIS Online for web maps, then you can just use the apps that are hosted in online. They are configurations of Web App Builder and Geoform and Maps and Apps Gallery, right, Walt? Those are the big ones.
That's right. Yep.
Yep.
And Drew had a question just about the recording. We'll be posting it on our meetups page shortly after the meetup, so it will be available to you. I think that's it, unless there's anything else that you guys wanted to cover.
I don't know, Scott, was there anything else you thought of while I was in or out of voice?
No, Walt, I mean, I think you hit it, right? I think the big thing is that, right, it's more than, oh, maybe you could just hit real quickly the sitemap. We talked about it a couple times, but there's really two deployment methods for the sitemap, right? There's one which is internal for the coordinator to build that from maybe a PDF submission, or you could expose that publicly. So maybe just touch on that a little bit.
Okay, that's a good one. I'm glad you brought that up, yeah, because I just kind of alluded to it, but I didn't explain that. So yeah, this application, as is documented here, is a configuration of the Web App Builder, and so it shows you how you can go through and add those widgets as we mentioned earlier. But you can choose two ways to deploy this, and it really gets down to how does your organization prefer. When I've gone on site and talked to a lot of different organizations, big cities, small towns, and so on, I found there are two typical workflows. Sometimes some city event coordinators, so it's typically some person that's in charge of managing or coordinating the event permit request through that process, will not want anybody from the outside coming in and creating an event map because they don't know what they would get. On the other hand, I've heard persons in other places in the same role say, no, I don't want to do it. I want them to do it. Now, if you want to allow somebody from the outside, let's say that you have an annual event that happens, a marathon or something, that happens in your community, and it's a large event, typically that's going to be in a contract, right? So the event organizer or sponsor has a contract with the city to make sure that all these requirements are met before they can conduct their marathon. And if you have a trusting relationship with them and it's a large amount of money and size and scale and so on, then you may want to give them a login and password to your organizational account so they can go in and create that sitemap for you. Again, that's a choice that you would make depending on your workflow and what makes sense to you. But the other one would be as the event coordinator create that sitemap, and they could simply use either the sitemap application, which is what you see here, or the event coordinator application. Which are basically the same. The only difference then is the configuration of how the input feedback from the internal agencies through comments are gathered. So you could use either one. So those are the two options that you have to choose how you want to deploy the sitemap.
Hey, Walt, the other question we got that was interesting too, and I know we've talked about, is how can I visualize maybe conflicting events, space and time, right? I mean, maybe you could and looking at event, you showed how you could filter events by name, but can you also kind of do that same thing? Look at all the events that are maybe proposed for this weekend or something.
That's correct. Yes, you can. In this case here, I have configured the event filter. The way I have it configured, I don't have another one right handy that I could show you, but this case I have it configured to filter on the group name. But you could add another, this group filter widget, again, it's a new, as of I think June, was its first release. This group filter widget, which is available in the Web App Builder application, can be several, there could be several different types of filters. So I could have one for date, I could have one for the type, type of event, or whatever I choose to. The nice thing about the group filter is, hence the name group, is it allows me to filter out everything, all the features that share that same attribute, in this case, event name. But if I wanted to do it for the event date, that's a nice way for me to be able to show just what's happening on a given date, all the events, right? So if I have multiple events across a large area, it allows me to do that. So that's one way you could configure that.
Let me see. I think you pretty much covered everything.
Drew also asked.
Yeah,
go ahead, Heather.
No, that's okay. I was scanning. I have a couple of windows open here. Can you view multiple events on the same map to look at for conflicts?
Yes.
You can use time to do that, right? Yep.
Yes, you could do. Yes, you can. One thing I have done in some of the applications that I've tested is I've created a time slider. So that's one way to do that. But I think you could configure this. Let me turn this persistent off here and see if I can show you what I'm talking about here. But yeah, you can see multiple ones over the top of each other, and then choose how you want to filter them. So you can see I got everything on here. In this case here, I might want to just close it and then scroll back out so I can see everything. So then you can choose how you want to. Again, I've got everything in one feature service so that you can see all the events that are occurring at one time.
Yep.
Let me see. Will you support the time slider widget?
Yes, that's just a widget that you can add into your Web App Builder configuration. So it's up to you. You can configure it that way. In this particular situation, I just have not added it to the Web App. So you could.
Okay. Mark also has a question. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, one of the questions, Walt, that came in was, can you filter events that only upcoming events and not past events? And you can absolutely do that. You'll notice when you dig in, there's a couple different dates on the events themselves, and you can just use filters on the map, right, to show future events or even past events. So like Walt was saying, so you could, when we start to get into the operations aspect, right, being able to look at the plans we had last year for this parade and compare that to what we're anticipating for, the coming year is going to be an important aspect of that for sure.
Right. That's right. Yep.
Can you add a filter by month from Catherine?
I'd have to look into that, Catherine. I think possibly you could set up this event filter. I just have to play around with that a little bit to see what it allows you to do. Again, the group filter is one of the widgets that's available to you in Web App Builder, so you could try that and play around with it. But that's an interesting one to try. From date to date.
Okay. Are there any other questions at all? I think that might be it, actually.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and wrap up. So thanks for joining us for today's meetup. So we look forward to hearing and seeing you at our next meetup, which is on Thursday, November 17th, which will be providing an overview of our addressing maps and apps. Until then, have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.